This meeting is being recorded.
If you didn't hear that, it's being recorded.
A great little announcement. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to just give it a minute as we admit a couple people to our meeting. Connor, if you want to kind of monitor the waiting room for us today and just admit people as they come in, if that works for you too.
Sure, definitely.
Fantastic. All right. Well, in our invitation, we said that we are going to get right to the point today because we know your time is valuable. You all are very busy right now. But welcome to today's webinar, Solutions and Supports for District Initiatives, Priorities, and Challenges. If I haven't met you, hi, my name is Rachel Cruzel. I'm the Territory Director here supporting Minnesota as well as 4 other states in kind of the North Central region of the US. My contact information is on the screen, so please reach out if you have any questions today, tomorrow, next week. With me is my sidekick, Connor. Connor, do you want to introduce yourself quick?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, just real quick. Like we said, we want to get started here, but somewhat new to TextHelp, started in October, and really excited to get to know everyone and hear from Jesse. So
fantastic. And with that, I want to introduce you to Jesse Morgan, our key speaker for the day. I'm going to let him introduce himself quick, and then I will actually run us through kind of our agenda and then hand the reins over to him today. So Jesse, do you want to introduce yourself quick?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Morgan, and I'm the director of the Assistive Technology Center for Minneapolis Public Schools. My background is as an occupational therapist, and now I'm working primarily as an assistive technology professional. This is my 22nd year in Minneapolis Public Schools. I'm also a graduate of Minneapolis Public Schools, and I have 2 wonderful children who attend Minneapolis Public Schools.
Jesse, I didn't know it had been 22 years. That's awesome.
Yeah, this is my 22nd year. I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So to quick get you through our agenda so I can hand the reins over to Jesse, we're going to do quick introductions. I'm clearly talking about our agenda right now. From there, we're going to let Jesse talk about his story about Read and Write and how he's been able to map the software to district priorities, something that we're hearing more and more about in the last few months and years, given all of the big picture things that districts are working on. With that, he's going to talk a little bit sort of how he did it, things like that. We also have Beth from Don Johnston as well. I'm going to let her introduce herself when we spend some time talking about UPAR towards the end. And then we've left plenty of time as promised for questions. We're going to talk about some resources, next steps. I think, Jesse, you've left some time after your part for questions, and then we've also left some at the end too. So feel free to throw them in the chat, or if you want to come off mute at any point, just give us a holler and we can do that. So with that being said, Jesse, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. So first, everyone, congratulations on the merger. For those of you who, I guess everybody knows by now, TextHelp and Don Johnston have joined forces, which we are really excited about here in Minneapolis Public Schools. And I think ultimately I'm all about things that improve the lives of students. And we think that this merger will ultimately do that. So we're excited to see those resources combined. We use both. And it's nice to have that all under one umbrella moving forward. So congrats to TextHelp and Don Johnston. And we have both a rep from TextHelp and Don Johnston on here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey with Read and Write. And it's really important for me to start by giving credit to the people who started this journey. I always say that they got it down to the 5-yard line and we were able to get it into the end zone. But if you want to click the first slide, it'll come up as, yep. So we started in 2016. We added Read and Write extension to students as they needed it on a per student basis. That was a process that was started by the folks who worked at APC before me. So I always like to make sure they're credited with getting the ball rolling here. And then our next step was we added the extension. IT added the free version of Read and Write for all Minneapolis public school students. This was a big victory for us. And actually we had to go through a lot of hoops with IT. They were kind of resistant. But after vetting it, they were able to add it. And as a reminder, Read and Write has a lot of awesome free tools. And it also allows students to use every tool for free for 30 days. So a lot of times our process was, hey, try it out for 30 days. If it is a worthwhile tool, then we will purchase the full version. So that was nice. And also we had a number of kids that really just needed the screen reading software, and the screen reading tool for Read and Write remains free after the 30 days, which is nice, as does the translation feature, which was especially important for us here in Minneapolis Public Schools, where we speak 43 different languages. So thanks to IT for getting adding that extension for all of our students. We appreciate their efforts there. And then in 2019 and 2020, we trialed it district-wide during distance learning. I think we all know that during distance learning, obviously that was not a great time or a really healthy time for a lot of people, but I do see some silver linings there, and one of them is that we're able to move quickly and move forward with a lot of the assistive technology initiatives that we had been sort of pushing for a while. The primary issue was we were not providing accessible material for a lot of our students. So when we went to distance learning, a lot of our students weren't able to access the material, and number one, that is illegal, and number two, it's inequitable. We found that the kids that were struggling the most were kids that maybe needed the most help. So we were able to, with that, move forward with the district-wide trial. And thanks to Read and Write for that. I know not a lot of products don't do those free trials. So we wanted to do that and then let the numbers speak. So here we're going to use it for 3 months. We're going to collect data. And then I love Read and Write. I think everybody should have it. But unless we can show that, unless our numbers support that, we probably wouldn't be able to move forward. So we did our 3-month trial during distance learning. And then because our data supported it, we were able to move to a 1-year sort of probationary district-wide license. This was nice because when we started the Read and Write trial during distance learning, we're kind of at the end of the year. Everyone was a little bit in chaos. It was really hard to introduce anything new. And so the nice thing about when we renewed it for a year is we're really able to hit the ground running in the fall, do lots of training, get everybody sort of ready to go before the kids came, and continue with training throughout the year. And I'm happy to report that after our 1-year license, we were able to show with both qualitative and quantitative data that Read and Write was a valuable tool for our students, that we are a district that promotes universal design for learning and equity, and that this was a tool that was helping with both of those things. So I'm really happy and excited that we just signed a 2-year extension to provide Read and Write for all students in Minneapolis public schools, regardless of ability, moving forward for the next 2 years. So one of the things that we try to do is not start with a tool, but start with a need and then arrive at the tool. For those of you familiar with assistive technology, it's the old SET framework is very similar to that. We don't start with a tool, we start with a need. And so we really looked hard at the district core priorities and then looked at tools. So we didn't start with the tool, we looked at the district core. And these are the district's core priorities as outlined by Superintendent Ed Graff and approved by our Board of Education. The first one is literacy. The second one is social emotional learning. The third one is equity. And the fourth one is multi-tiered structural supports. So super important that we were able to tie in Read and Write to our district priorities. And the literacy part, that's pretty easy. We know that it improves literacy. Social emotional learning, to be totally honest, I wasn't originally sold on that. And I like to share information with my directors that I feel confident in, and I'm not just trying to sell them something. But over time, I've learned actually that this is actually one of the biggest priorities that Read and Write addresses. And here's why. Because when kids don't have the tools that they need, they don't do well in school. They suffer with mental health issues. They suffer with anxiety. They act out. They have behavior. A recent research article I read showed that students that struggle with reading, before they go into a classroom, experience the same level of anxiety as someone who has just seen a tiger in the wild. There's a really interesting article called Reducing the Tigers in the Classroom. And it talks about how we measured cortisol for students that struggle with reading and the cortisol levels of people who had just seen something terrifying. And it was the same. The social emotional priority just became so crystal clear to me right then. Imagine a student, very knowledgeable, but struggles with reading. They're getting ready to go into a class and they're terrified they're going to be called on to read out loud. They're going to be called on to share what they know, and they know it. They just struggle with reading. By giving them this tool, a tool that every single other kid has so they don't stand out, we are significantly reducing that anxiety, and we're helping to tame those tigers in the classroom. And so social emotional has actually become one of our stronger talking points. Equity, the distribution of assistive technology has not always been equitable. We know that if a parent has a PACER advocate, they're much more likely to get assistive technology than someone who doesn't. We know that our resources in Minneapolis Public Schools oftentimes were centralized in Southwest Minneapolis, or more affluent families. One of the things that we've tried really hard to do here at the Assistive Technology Center is make all things available to all students. That increases equity. We want to address it at the building level. We want everybody to have the same tool. And when we start with everybody having Read and Write, that is the most equitable way for us to provide assistive technology. And we've seen results in some of our lower performing schools since introducing this as an equitable framework. So we see it as an equity issue as well. And then the MTSS, that just kind of speaks for itself. It's just multi-leveled system of support. This is clearly a leveled system of support that can be used by kids who don't read and can be used by kids who are doing college applications and everybody in between. So we like that about it. Here's the key. If I had to say 3 words that really helped us move towards a district-wide application, it's universal design for learning. So we are a district that believes strongly in that. And actually, small side note, but we're starting to use universal design for learning as a tool for equity, and we're bringing in a much bigger audience. So UDL is often always special education, and we're like yelling to everybody, UDL, but it stays in the special education silo. We are now expanding in a fairly rapid way beyond the walls of special education. And we're starting to use universal design for learning for equity. In fact, I think our speaker to the entire district next August is somebody that I recommended, and it's Andrew Tisha Fitzgerald, who wrote the book Anti-Racism and UDL. The 3 guiding principles, we'll go back just a hair. So the guiding principles of universal design for learning are the engagement, representation, and action and expression. And we feel like the UDL principles in particular that relate to Read and Write are multiple means of representation and action and expression when it relates to Read and Write. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So this year, when we came back to school, we were greeted by Chief Academic Officer Eric Moore. And as he was addressing the entire district, so every single ESP, food service worker, teacher, every principal, social worker, everybody, he started talking, and the climate framework that he was talking about in my mind, I started thinking that sounds a lot. He was using a lot of these words that we've been using in universal design for a long time. And as he was talking, I was thinking, okay, feeling valued and respected for your whole self, meeting individual needs. As he was talking, I started to think, wow, this sounds a lot like UDL. And then the last one here is sharing power. That aligns real closely with our UDL and equity. I was basically screaming and texting all my friends on our UDL chat, because we're nerds like that, and we have a UDL group chat, that this is UDL. Like, this is the message that the executive chief academic officer wants every single employee in Minneapolis Public Schools to know. All of these things that he's saying are UDL. We're using different language. He didn't mention UDL, but it's the exact same thing. And the fact that they want all of the staff in Minneapolis Public Schools to follow this framework, we think that, so this is what they're saying they want. We feel like universal design for learning is a way to help get there. And we feel like Read and Write is a tool, one of our most widely used tools that falls within the UDL umbrella. So we're aligning really neatly with what the district is saying they want, and what their priorities are. And I also, it's super important, administrators and directors, we can say what we want, but what is really important is what our parents and families are saying and what our kids are saying. And so these were snippets that were shared in that exact same training to every single employee in the district. And this is what parents are saying. Each student is unique in their own way. Students are at different places in their learning. Give the kids the tools they need to excel, and they will exceed. Everybody learns at a different pace. This is all UDL, friends. This is all falls under universal design for learning. And basically what these parents are saying is, we want a universal design for learning classroom where the variability of learners is accounted for. And whether that means, struggling readers or having things read to them, or somebody who's doing a college essay is able to use their voice to type because, they struggle with writing, or they just get more information out when they're talking and they use the spelling and grammar check, and everybody in between. So it was really heartening to hear the district say that, to hear parents say that, to hear students say that. And then us in the UDL world, we're saying, yeah, we've been saying this. So it's nice to all be on the same page now with that. Okay, so we have what we call our UDL toolkit in Minneapolis Public Schools, and one of our primary tools is Read and Write for Google. And it's just such a great example of UDL, and we talked about the framework earlier. So real quick, I don't want to go too deep into UDL because that's a whole nother topic, but multiple means of representation, which means information is presented in a variety of ways. I keep going back to our struggling readers. So if kids struggle with reading, they're not being graded on math when they do a word problem. They're not being graded on science when they have to. They're always being graded on their reading, unless it's presented to them in an alternative way. You really want to know what a kid knows in science? Then you have to make sure that you're eliminating any barriers for them. And we love that Read and Write has those built-in tools. If kids struggle with reading, they can have the screen read to them. If they are, kids who need lots of extra support, they can use the picture dictionary. So instead of words, information can be conveyed to them in pictures. And also here we use our translation tool, where information can be translated into a student's native language. Here's a great example. We have some kids in our district now who have arrived from Afghanistan. And these Afghan students, I was asked to consult with this student, and where we're going to put this student in special ed. And the student didn't seem to be a special ed student. And well, they can't do this and that. And I said, well, you go to Afghanistan and you join a 6th grade classroom, and let them speak to you in their language, and you would be seen as someone who needs special education. So we need to eliminate those types of barriers to really get at what students know. So of course the student isn't going to be able to read. He's been in Afghanistan the last 10 years learning to read in a different language. Then the other one is action and expression. And I think our second most commonly used tool is the voice typing. So we have seen so much improvement in what kids are able to share when they're able to share it in a way that makes sense for them. We're so focused on reading and writing, when we don't compensate for kids who struggle with those two tools, we just see them fall apart. When we give them those tools, we see increased confidence, increased work production, increased attendance, decreased behavior. So action and expression is them being able to share what they know in multiple ways. A lot of times the easiest example is, instead of writing, they're using their voice to type. This could also be things like, using the drawing tools or highlighting what's important. Just being able to share what they know in multiple ways. And so this is our usage data. And this is what we use to help justify our 2-year extension. And so you can see our data, which is collected for us by TextHelp. And we're averaging, let's say, 2,500 uses per day. And so these are broken up daily. This is just a small snippet of time. I would guess if I were to do this right now, it would actually be quite a bit higher. I would bet we're higher, but I don't know. I'd have to check that. And then the little circle there is the pie graph is the word I'm looking for, not circle. That is the tools that are used most commonly. And some of this was a little bit surprising to me. I was surprised how often the word prediction is used, but the data is the data. And so that is helpful to share with my team to show, like, look, this is being used this often, this many days. These are tools that are being used. And this year, when we went district-wide, we're starting to get increased use outside of special education. And so we are seeing a lot of use in ELL, in Title I, in our AVID programs. And one of the things that I wanted to do was create a central resource that people have so that they can go and get the information that they need. We have 30,000 students in Minneapolis Public School. I'm obviously 7,000 kids with IEPs. So we're just a small team here at ATC. We can't support everybody that would need help with read and write. So we put together this website that has brief trainings, that has short videos, cheat sheets, I call them, for the toolbars, and then some frequently asked questions. And if you want to click on that, Rachel, you can just see, and you can share the link. People are welcome to replicate this website. I have no problem with that. If you want to click on the toolbars tab, that's kind of yeah, so that's kind of nice. I share this with families. I'll go over this with kids that I work with, teams. And this is just a really nice central resource that I created as we went district-wide. I wanted everybody to sort of have a resource that they could use. It's intended for both beginners and people who want to use it at a high level, start using a new Orbit node on PDFs, and sort of everybody in between. There's stuff for parents. So if anybody wants to replicate that, they are welcome to. I just use Google to create this website. So people are like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, part of it is like a little bit selfish, to be honest, because I didn't want to have to like help 30,000 people learn how to use this tool. So now I'm always like, oh, if you check the website, check the website. So yeah. Okay, so these are where our steps to success for district-wide implementation. This is what worked for our district. starting with the free trial. But before you start with the free trial, doing some training and some hyping up around it. If you start with the free trial and then do all that stuff, you might not have great numbers within the 3 months trial. And then just collecting data, both numeric data, but also getting qualitative data, sending out surveys. Hey, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What tool could be improved, or why did you use this tool? And just collecting really good data. But really the most important thing is just linking it into what nobody wants a new initiative. So I think linking it into what your district is already doing. And for us, this was a pretty easy sell. Like, we seem to be really in sync with what our district is trying to do. And it was not a difficult sell, because we're saying, these are your priorities. This is what you would like everybody to be able to have or do. Here's one tool that can help with that. And I have to give a lot of credit to our directors, who have always been fully supportive of Universal Design for Learning and those initiatives. So a lot of credit. I'm just one person. I don't have the ability to make these large financial decisions. I can promote things and ask for things, but a lot of credit to our directors for having that support of Universal Design for Learning. We also worked really closely with Text Help. Rachel's great. She's been kind of our main person to work with. And so we love having her to help. She's always super quick to respond and keeping us updated with new and exciting tools and trainings. And then just creating some implementation and training materials. For us, that was a website. I also do in-site training, on-site trainings. We have a central resource here in Minneapolis Public Schools called The Source, where we just put trainings to everything. There's something on there. And then training other people to train. Like, we want other people to, we don't want to be the only voices here. And we're working more with our ELL and Title I and our media specialists. That actually has been an avenue that we kind of not tapped before. They've been training on this as well. All right, I did it. Almost 30 minutes.
You did it, Jesse. Perfect.
So yeah. So I know I get so excited. That's usually my biggest feedback when I do these presentations, is slow down a little bit. But Rachel will tell you, because we've done a couple of these together, I do get really excited, especially when I talk about the reading and the equity. And here's an interesting thing. So we have in Minneapolis Public Schools, based on national data for a number of students with dyslexia. So Yale researchers say about 20% of the population. That would mean in Minneapolis Public Schools, we have 6,913 kids with dyslexia. And not all of them are getting what they need. In fact, I would argue maybe even more of them are not necessarily getting what they need. And so we had that conversation yesterday, so it's fresh on my mind. But that's another data point you could use is, research shows 20% of the population has dyslexia. Calculate the number of students in your district or in your school and say, this is the amount of kids that we think could really benefit from a tool like this. So that's a lot of kids, almost 7,000 kids. So, and they don't all have IEPs or 504s, which is the nice thing about going district-wide.
Hey, Jesse, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I have one that I'm going to throw your way.
Okay.
So I've been working with a handful of districts as of lately, sort of around exactly what you talked about, because they're seeing this alignment of how Read and Write or our tools can support the district initiatives. And we've talked a little bit about strategies of how do you do this? And some schools have said, I've actually pulled the initiatives off. I've highlighted language in it to match up with what we're hoping to achieve with this tool. Was there something specific process-wise you followed in the district to do this? Something similar, completely different?
Yeah, I think, to deflect a little bit from my role, I think we have a really strong team around that. And so I think if it comes from one person, it's a little bit harder sell. It's a team that started, even before I was involved, and that team has grown. So really, it was a team approach, having people from different, with different perspectives, all saying the same thing instead of like one person. So I would suggest trying to, create a UDL team, try to have an admin on there, and, regular ed if you can. And, our team was pretty diverse. We had administrators, we had regular ed, and so we were all kind of speaking with a collective voice from different perspectives. So that helped. And also just starting small, like UDL was so big, to just start small. Like, let's try this one tool at one school, see how that goes, and then expand from there.
Jesse, we do have a question in the chat, and the question is, have you seen AT referrals go down because of this adoption?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We used to, I used to do probably 200 sets a year. Those of you, most of you probably know SET is Student Environment Task Tools. It's a way to evaluate and also consider assistive technology. And we used to have people do a set, and then at the end of the set, we would determine the tool that was best for them. And I probably did, to be honest, I probably did like 10 last year, because now that everybody has this tool, and it's such a, it's such a nice thing for anybody that's been in AT for a while. They remember that all these things used to be separate tools, right? The word prediction used to be a separate tool as co-writer. The screen reader used to be Kurzweil. The voice to type used to be Dragon Dictation. So I remember when these were all, to have it, and that's why I appreciate it so much, because I remember when I used to have to go to a school with a disk, install it on one computer, and then, there were always trouble issues. They could only use it on that one computer. And so, we've definitely seen those numbers go way, way down now that everybody has this. Yeah, I mean, they've decreased. I mean, they probably decreased like 90%. I could probably get that data, but yes, good question.
I would love to see that data at some point to see.
Yeah,
I'll
look it up.
Let's do 2 more quick questions that popped in before we throw it over to Beth. So the next one is, anyone in the district, do they use the math and STEM tool that TextHelp has, Equatio?
Yeah, yep, we do. We have students that use that. We have some, we have a couple of students that are taking high-level math classes, and they need it to do those, the theorems and things that are difficult for them. The couple students that use it both have physical impairments, and so it's really hard for them to write that stuff out, so they use their voice. We also have a high school that is using it this year. Edison High School, I believe, is either doing a chart. You probably know more about that than I do, Rachel, because that's not coming through us. But so the answer is yes, we have students using Equatio, not near as many as we have using Read and Write, but we definitely see value in that tool.
Yeah, Edison down the street from me, not too far, has been using it with their high school geometry students, actually. So there's about 250 students a year who get to use it, which is fun. Nice. And then last questions before I pass over to Beth. Do general education teachers assist with rollout with general education students?
Yes, and actually we are branching out more and more to general education students. It's a little bit harder to get in front of them as an audience. But yes, I have been teaching some classes, and we've started you do like your intended audience. And I used to always say, oh, special educators. And now, because we're doing so much UDL and so many tools that are available to all students, we've actually opened that up to regular educators, which is kind of new for us. And I love having them there and just having their perspective and getting their feedback. So the answer is yes, not as many as we would like, but definitely we're on that path. And I think I see a bigger and bigger role moving forward. One of the things we did is we are training media specialists, and of course they're regular education, and they see a lot of value in these tools, the literacy tools, and they are actually in turn training their schools. And the media specialist who took a class that I took, that I taught, went to her entire staff and did a training on read and write. And afterwards, multiple, so more than one staff members came up and they said, I really wish I had something like this when I was in school, because people thought I was dumb. And these are staff. So these are people who have, overcome whatever issues those were. And it just was such a reminder to me that there are a lot of kids out there that are that can benefit from these tools that aren't necessarily on an IEP, don't necessarily have a 504. And that was really eye-opening. And that's another reason we're trying to get it out, break out through the walls of special education with these tools.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. If you do have other questions that percolate, feel free to throw them into the chat and we'll see if we have time at the end. If not, we can reach out. With that, I would love to introduce you all to a new colleague of mine who I've really enjoyed getting to know and work with as of lately, Beth Kalish. I'm actually going to let her introduce herself and tell you all about her.
And Rachel, I have to run.
Yeah.
I have to run and get my son to soccer. One of his best friend's mom is in this call, so she will understand, Ruth Murray. And but if there are questions, please email them and I will respond tomorrow.
Great. We'll take care of that.
All right,
all right, Beth, now you're up. Ready?
Perfect. Well, Jesse, have fun at soccer. Hopefully it's a little bit warmer than it is here in Illinois. So yeah, how fun is that? Rachel, thank you for making sure I was a part of this. I too am enjoying our time in just meeting each other. And this merge, just like Jesse said, it's perfect. It is bringing together some great resources and helping you guys, as Jesse was talking about UDL, just giving you everything you need in your toolbox to be successful. So Rachel, again, thank you. And yes, it has been nothing but a joy spending time with you and getting to know you as well. So we are here to talk about UPAR and so many things. I was jotting down as Jesse was talking, because that's where UPAR, the protocol for accommodations in reading, is going to support about 99.9% of what Jesse was saying. So Rachel, I think as we go forward, there's just a couple slides I had for us, because it's more just about giving the reason or the acronym for what it stands for. The protocol for accommodations in reading is going to help us identify what those and problems is a word that I put here to bring some attention, but they aren't necessarily problems. As Jesse talked about, they were possibly considered barriers. So as our students come into a classroom every school year, it's something new and something uncertain to them, a new teacher, new environment. We talk about our social and emotional anxiety. As of late, I think it has just escalated in such a way. And I actually loved hearing Jesse point that out as something that's been incorporated in Minneapolis, as it should be with every district. And that was something I wrote down. I want to look at the tiger in the wild. I mean, think about that, just in different places that you and I go to every single day, that, sometimes when it's something new and you're unsure about, you go in cautiously. And again, I think about those kiddos who are like, please don't call on me. Like, I know this, but please don't ask me to read. So in all of our hopes to get us what we need, again, Minneapolis has done their students such a great justice by making sure it was district-wide. Everyone has those tools available to us. I'm certain, I think if we move to that next slide, I'm not really sure if we're ready there yet. Without solid data, Rachel and Jesse wouldn't have been able to propose to everybody the need to go forward with, again, that UDL approach. When we talk about our students who do struggle, sometimes it is just left to our teachers to decide, or I, as a parent of my children when younger, I had all the right answers. You need to do this and you need to do that. I had no idea. It was based on all of us in the lines waiting for our students to get our kiddos to get off the bus, that we all decided collectively that this was the solution. But again, data is something that cannot be disputed. As you start working towards those next steps, that's where the protocol for accommodations can help make that case for our teachers or for our students. So Denise DeCoste is actually a person who worked at a district out on the East Coast, and her and Linda came up with this protocol that will help determine if a reading accommodation will help your students get back up to grade level. So I think if we go to the next slide, Rachel, we could be, yeah, so UPAR, what is it? It's an acronym, of course. We wouldn't be in education if we didn't have an acronym. The PAR just stands for the Protocol for Accommodations in Reading, and so that's PAR. We throw the U out there in front of that just to identify that if we can universally take all of our students through this process in a shorter amount of time. So as we talk about that universal design for learning, the protocol will take our students through this process where we will check their independent reading. We will go through that reading passage, question and answer to check comprehension. We will send them off again on that universal or UPAR. They'll be on an internet ready device. So they'll go through that independent read. They'll go through an apparent adult reader. It's a professional voice. They read that passage. They have answers and questions. And then again, it is a text reader, very, I don't want to say robotic, but I think you guys know the direction I'm going, where it's very apparent it is different. Based on the understanding, the comprehension questions, right or wrong, we will either move them up or we will move them down so that we can determine if that accommodation will help. I think, Rachel, my next slide should hopefully be just a snapshot of what that data could look like. If we were to do this for free, we do have that paper version. It's one person at a time. So it's going to be 45 minutes. You're going to get one answer. And this is what that one student could look like, where again, we think of it as a stoplight. For most of us, green means go, yellow should mean precaution, but some of us, that's me, will proceed a little bit faster and then we'll hit red, which means to stop. So looking at this kiddo again as administrators or as staff members, all I need are 3 pieces of information. I need a student's name, I need their grade level, and your best guess if you don't have what grade level they may be reading at. The protocol is going to do everything else for us. They're going to, again, take that student through that process I just mentioned. You're sitting live on the backside through this universal or UPAR, and you're seeing this data live. So knowing that this 5th grade student who's reading at a 2nd grade level could actually get up to grade level with either a text reader or a human reader. So think about that time that can be saved. So teachers no longer need to be modifying any sort of text. If Jesse was to run across a teacher who's like, no, a timeout, we're not giving them read and write, they don't need that. You know what? Jesse can go up to him. Rachel can, give Jesse those words that says, hey, you know what? We actually can prove that that student can get to grade level with the text reader or with the human reader. Again, it helps support that need to use read and write based on the fact that a text reader could get them to grade level. So thinking about different resources in different ways, again, that's the solution Minneapolis has in their building, but think about the solution that you guys have in your buildings. So again, if you have a text reader, give them that independence, give them that choice or that opportunity, because again, choice and voice in UDL tells you, hey, you know what, let's give you that independence. And as much as we love to spend time with Miss Kalish as she reads us our passages, I'm not going to be there forever as much as I would love to, because you guys are adorable. You're going to need to get on your way. So give them that independence. So again, as we talk about that student, giving them that independence, I think about what Jesse was talking about. Again, he is excited about the opportunity that he has. UDL, that's a huge thing that they did with Rachel's help in Minneapolis. But you heard his excitement in his voice, and he said those struggling readers who become readers because of this. Again, now we have that that opportunity to show that student in that's gone through this process you can actually get to grade level. Again, this kiddo thought they were in 5th grade reading at a 2nd grade level. If you go a little further and dig a little deeper, you can actually say they can get above grade level if they had a human reader. So can you imagine the student in 5th grade who might think they could get above grade level when in theory they are thinking that they're at 2nd grade reading level? So I heard Jesse's excitement and think about what he said about the confidence. This student who thinks they're kind of not so smart suddenly has this great confidence thinking, hey, you know what? I can actually read and understand and comprehend a 7th grade. Huge for everyone. So again, that is my long and short of UPAR. I want to make sure I don't take up too much time, that there's any questions, comments in regards to this, but yeah, UPAR is really here to help support everyone as far as finding that need. It's getting that data, and it's about showing that growth and that possibility for every student. So again, it's just an additional opportunity to support that need to have all of these accommodations and tools. So Rachel, I think I have enough time. I've done it in all the time, so I'm gonna hand it back
right
to you.
up to the end of time. I mean, clearly you all are joining a bunch of passionate educators and former educators on this call with how excited we are about these tools and how they can help your students. I'm not seeing any questions for Beth. Go ahead and throw them into the chat. If you do have to bounce off, thank you for coming, but I'll walk you through a couple of resources and next steps for all of us, because I know we're at a minute after time. But just as a reminder, if you haven't checked out Read and Write, it is free for all educators. So go ahead and sign up. You can just Google Text Help Free for Teacher at Allegient or our website. If anything excited you today, obviously reach out to Connor, myself, Beth about UPAR. We'll make sure that you get copies of the slide deck as well as the Tigers in the Classroom article. It's a really powerful one that I've recently read. Likewise, I mentioned Free for Teacher. Go ahead and explore the tools if it's something that your district or a peer in another district might be interested about. Likewise, if it's something that you want to try out, give us a holler and we can definitely work with you to get the tools into the hands of your students to see if it's useful or not. So with that being said, my contact information is up on the screen. Thanks so much for joining us. Beth, Connor, any other final words from you two today?
Just thank you guys for what you do. You make a difficult day look very easy. So, and thank you, Rachel and Connor, for making sure I was here. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.